Welcome back to AI for Founders. I'm Ryan Estes. You ever notice how giving birth in America, one of the richest countries in the world, is somehow getting more dangerous? Maternal deaths are rising, access to care is falling, and the system meant to protect new mothers is still running on fax machines. That's the problem Anish Sebastian, CEO and co-founder of Babyscripts, set out to fix. His company has raised over $37 million, helped manage hundreds of thousands of pregnancies, and is using AI, remote monitoring, and data science to reimagine what care looks like when your doctor is as close as your phone. In this episode, we get into the friction between innovation and regulation, the cultural tug-of-war between doctors sworn to do no harm and patients desperate for faster, smarter care. And you'll learn how Anish is using technology to bridge that gap, why AI might soon assist in every pregnancy, and what the future of healthcare looks like when access isn't tied to a waiting room. This conversation is for founders building in healthcare, investors chasing high-impact innovation, and anyone who's ever wondered why the most advanced nation on Earth can't seem to modernize maternity care. If you like stories where AI meets ambition and babies meet data, join the tribe at aiforfounders.co. Every week we drop behind-the-scenes insights you won't hear on the mic, tools, tactics, founders who are building what's next. It's like venture capital for your brain, minus the awkward coffee chats. Sign up for the newsletter at aiforfounders.co. And if this episode made you smarter, or at least slightly more hopeful about humanity, leave us a review so other founders can find their next big idea here. This episode is brought to you by Kitcaster, the podcast booking agency that turns founders into thought leaders. Here's the deal. Every week, 100,000 podcasts are looking for guests. Your ideal audience is already listening. They just don't know who you are yet. Kitcaster gets you booked on the shows that matter, your industry's top podcasts, hosted by people who actually care about your story. No cold pitching, no awkward outreach, just meaningful conversations that grow your brand, your traffic, and your pipeline. If you've ever said, we should really be doing more podcasts, well, this is your sign. Visit kitcaster.com and book a free strategy session, because the best conversations in business happen behind the microphone. That's Kitcaster by Moburst. All right. Coffee is great, but coffee won't prep your meetings for you. It'll just keep you awake while you panic, hastily scrolling through LinkedIn at 6:59 a.m. Ambient, however, will prep your meetings. Each morning you get a founder-tuned briefing sourced overnight from your calendar, your meeting history, and the web. It's like walking into every call with a cheat sheet that you didn't have to write. No more scrambling, no more guessing, just context, confidence, and focus. And if you're raising money, ambient investor dossiers are an absolute must-have. You'll know the investor's portfolio, their interests, and their latest moves before you even step into the room. You'll even get a heads up on red flags. Think of it as the caffeine upgrade that your calendar actually needs. Prep while you sleep, perform while you're awake. Sign up for free at ambient.us. Go check it out at ambient.us. That's ambient.us. Anish, how are you, sir? Welcome to the show.
Ryan, I'm excited to be here. Thank you for the opportunity and having me on.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Now, to give us some context for this conversation, give us a quick introduction to your company, Babyscripts.
Yeah, I'm one of the founders and CEO of Babyscripts. We are in the mom-baby space. Our mission is to make the world a better place to have babies. And who can't get behind that, right? But specifically, I think the things that we like to highlight is maternal morbidity is increasing in the United States. We're actually the only country in the advanced economy where that's happening. But that's not something we're super proud of. And I think one of the things that we believe is a big kind of barrier is for access to care. Or the heart of Babyscripts is a platform to help providers, think about doctors, OBGYNs, nurse midwives, improve access to care by using smartphones, data science, really remote monitoring technologies. We think that can make a big impact in care, ultimately creating better quality and lowering the cost, right? So that's what we're all about.
I love it, man. And thank you for doing that. It's you could obviously do a lot of different things and you're out here helping the babies. You're right. Like what better can you get behind besides that? Now, it's interesting to me in medicine that it's called care. And I happen to be a person who and probably some other people can relate to this, that there seems to be a tension. It's like you have patients that are in need of care, and you have doctors that are willing to provide care, and yet our medical system is such that like it's just an absolute quagmire of bureaucracy and issues. And of course, all of these are probably front page kind of news items, but really the promise of technology is to facilitate that care. So when I'm doing research on your company, it sounds like you guys founded in 2013 with the vision of internet-enabled devices and big data transforming pregnancy care. Now we're at this moment where we have AI integrating into all of our technology. Nobody really knows exactly how we can utilize some of these tools. There's a lot of different creative ways. So if you look back to when you were founding the company to where the company and where technology is now, what's new and different and maybe exciting to the projects you're working on?
Yeah, that's a really good question. To your point, right? Like we did found the company over a decade ago, and I sometimes like to joke I didn't have gray hair when I started the company, and gotta look closely, but you might catch a couple. But really, we've gone through, I'll say, multiple waves of technology adoption. Right? So, and when we started, like a telemedicine appointment was a very novel concept, right? Now today, you can dial a doctor or call a doctor, get on a call, and get a mobile prescription, right? So it was all very new, and certainly remote care or remote patient monitoring was certainly very new, right? So the first few years for us was just really clinical validation. We did some studies. We partnered up with some doctors and academic medical centers and really published on the clinical efficacy of it. And then, as you can imagine, COVID was this big accelerant, right? People couldn't leave their homes, right? It was there was national shutdowns. But how do you deliver care when you can't leave the home, right? So you got to do it remotely, asynchronously. So much like a lot of other areas of healthcare, we saw this dramatic adoption of. Since then, the pendulum sort of swung back a little bit, and people are trying to figure out what the right balance is of in-person care and virtual care and digital health and all that kind of stuff, right? So it was the first wave of technology that we saw, and certainly kind of we were big beneficiaries of it. The second wave is happening right now, which is, I'd say, even bigger, right? Which is the impact of AI and AI-related technologies in healthcare. And there is so much to do and unpack there. Ultimately, the delivery of care, we believe over the course of several years, will be delivered by AI in some way, shape, or form, right? But I always say in healthcare, it's going to take a little longer for us to get there, right? We're going to be probably one of the last industries to truly, fully kind of adopt healthcare. As you can imagine, because of all kinds of risks, right? Regulatory, compliance, business model incentives, and patient risk, right? So I think, in the time that I've been, with the company, we've seen sort of two major sort of waves, right? There's the mobile, digital, tele, and then now the AI, right? And on both instances, we've really taken advantage of it, right? So.
Yeah, there's a major regulatory compliance with medical for good reason, but there's also kind of cultural barriers as well. The old guard and, doctors probably get a reputation for being stodgy and maybe a little arrogant for good reason. We want people in charge of our medical decisions to have a certain swagger about them. How does that kind of impact the integration of technology into kind of medicine?
Yeah, for sure. I think medical professionals, doctors, by their nature, tend to be fairly conservative in their thinking, I'll say, right? Now, they certainly are, open to innovation, but for a lot of good reasons, they want to make sure it isn't going to harm patients. Right? I think that's a really important thing. They took that Hippocratic oath, right? And as a result of that, what we see is dissemination of any new technology takes sometimes over a decade, right? Think about a new drug or therapeutic or medical device. Post FDA clearance will take a lot of time to get, market acceptance. And even then, I think there tends to be skepticism around new studies, right? We just saw the whole thing that came up with Tylenol, right? And then pregnancy, right? So, yeah, I think, for a lot of good reasons, there tends to be, and medical professionals tend to be fairly cautious. I will say, I think, the other big kind of barrier in this is, the structure of payment and incentives in healthcare, you know, like forces you to just go down one very narrow pathway. It's fee for service healthcare. So if something is not being paid for, why would a doctor do it, right? So I'll just give you an example. The other day, I was talking to someone who was collecting all this data from their Aura ring, right? I don't know if you're familiar with like the Aura ring, right? So, and he was telling me, it's like, hey, like, why doesn't my doctor want to know, all the patterns of my sleep and overall health and wellness, and maybe he could find some insights and give me some recommendations on it. I think there's number one, right? Just, is that data valuable and meaningful, right? And there's some open questions there. But more than anything, it's, why would a doctor take 20, 30 minutes of his time and, do this review when, no payer is incentivizing him to do that, right? So I think there's just like this mismatch in payment and business model, right?
It's a massive tension. And you can see it play out on NFL Sundays. You know what I mean? So you have kind of like a conservative, slow moving regulatory body and culture in medicine. But if you're watching football, there's going to be an advertisement where someone's like, hey, man, do you want to lose a bunch of weight, get super sexy with a full head of hair and a massive erection? No problem. We got you covered right here. Just go to the app and download a couple of things and boom, we're sending you pills. So like the market's demanding like speed and innovation, and like we don't want these barriers. I don't want to have to deal with like driving 20 miles to go see my doctor for 30 minutes where he taps me on the knee with a hammer and is like, yeah, you're good. And you ask them about your diet and they're like, eat what tastes good. You ask about your sleep, you're like, sleep when you're tired. I think the demand is really asking for a lot more, and technology is delivering a lot of these answers. Now, you've been doing this for 10 years plus. So you have a good kind of finger on the pulse of like, not only regulatory, but also culturally, like what people are ready to take. Because oftentimes if you're giving too many ideas at once, you're going to overwhelm people. So when you're thinking about Babyscripts, what are the kind of successful features of the tool now that kind of resonate both with, patients, mamas, and doctors? Okay, everyone loves to talk about vision, the pitch, the funding round, but you know what gets zero love? The actual product build. That magical, terrifying phase where nothing works, the docs are out of date, and you've asked your dev team, how's it going, for the 47th time today on Slack. That's where Code Story comes in. It's a podcast for startup founders who know that building the thing is the thing. Hosted by Noah Labhart, Code Story goes deep with tech leaders who've been through it, shipping real products, surviving messy launches, and figuring out what actually works and when you're on the edge of chaos. If you're building now or ever plan to, you'll want these stories in your earballs. Search Code Story wherever you get your podcasts or visit codestory.co, because founders talk vision, but builders tell code stories. Okay, I've got a confession. As a podcaster and founder, I'm constantly meeting incredible people, guests, listeners, or other entrepreneurs. But here's my little secret. I'm terrible at following up. My inbox is basically a graveyard of missed opportunities. Does that sound like you? You meet someone amazing, exchange emails, have great intentions, and then life happens. 6 months later, you're kicking yourself thinking, I should have stayed in touch with that person. This is exactly why I started using warmstart.ai. And honestly, it's transformed how I think about my network. Instead of letting relationships go cold, Warmstart analyzes my existing contacts and helps me identify who I should be reaching out to and why. It even writes the outreach messages for me. But here's the key. I review everything before it goes out. I'm not just talking about this because they're a sponsor. I'm talking about it because watching a healthcare executive use this to build his entire advisory board in one weekend with 4 CEO signups made me realize I was leaving money on the table every single day. Your network is your net worth, but only if you actually nurture it. Check out warmstart.ai, use code AIFF to get $50 off your first month. Stop letting your relationships turn into missed revenue.
Yeah, it's a really good question. Look, I think one thing I'll start by mentioning is that the users and the patients we serve are typically young, right? Between the ages of 18 and 35. So what does that mean? That means they are not even millennial anymore. They're Gen Z, right? So they are on the tip of the spear. They like to TikTok, right? They love adopting and examining new technologies, right? So I think one thing we've seen is as a result of that, they just demand better tools and better products and better services from their. That's point number one. Point number two is in pregnancy specifically, it's a defined episode. Like you have 1, 2, 3, and we think about the fourth trimester after the delivery as well. So 4 trimesters, right? That's what we're dealing with. And there, folks want to be really connected with their care team. Right? And what I mean by that is they don't want to just go to, online or some consumer store and just buy a widget, Yeah, that's cool, right? And there's a value in that. But what they want is to collect this data, interact with these devices, but then share that with their care team in a way that is super thoughtful without creating more work for them. And then that's what we focus in on, right? So when someone gets pregnant and gets on Babyscripts, we ship them a kit. It goes through the home. There's usually a blood pressure cuff in there, the connected blood pressure cuff, cellular, Wi-Fi, some Bluetooth, right? Not only are we with the companion app and a bunch of other tooling within the app, are we collecting all that information? If something requires immediate attention, we're notifying the patient, but also their doctor. The whole loop is complete, right? So we think that modern way of delivering pregnancy care is through this virtual sort of asynchronous modality, as opposed to knee to knee, right? Like those days are gone, right? So we're adopting that and really amplifying that across the country.
Amazing. So blood pressure is one data point that people can get right in their homes. What are some of the other data points?
Yeah, so we look at weight, right? Gestational weight gain. And then the other things we started to look at is diabetes, right? So if you're pregnant and become diabetic or already diabetic, become pregnant, right? Gestational diabetes, right? That's this blood sugar that we collect from. And then through the app itself, we collect a whole bunch of information around symptoms. How are you feeling? What's your mood like? Now we collect specific symptoms around preeclampsia, which is a very dangerous condition in pregnancy. We also look at overall, social determinants of health. You have difficulty getting to the practice. Do you need consultation help? Maternal mental health studies, right? Scanning for depression or suicidal ideation, right? So yes, through the app and kind of the device category, we're able to collect a lot of data. And then in the future, we're also looking at remote sonography, fetal monitoring, type of thing. So I think that stuff gets a little bit more science fiction-y, but we think that's the future, right?
But it's here. It's here now, So it's a mix of kind of contextual, almost like a journal, the old school baby book. You pull that out for any one of us, and our moms filled out the first 5 pages and it's blank the whole way through. Largely because, you didn't have it pinging you asking for updates, which we can do now on people's phones. You also have biometric data that is getting inputted. That's, if it's blood pressure, I'm sure you can add a lot of different blood works and things like that. Now, what I'm really interested in with kind of like where we are right now is kind of what are kind of the ideal data points, because we're getting to a point with wearables and things like that. I mean, you mentioned the Oura Ring, and we got, Zuckerberg's got his glasses, and we're going to have all these different ways to measure. I had a wonderful conversation with the founder of Canary Speech that's doing AI analysis of your voice, and they can detect like depression, stress, anxiety, multiple sclerosis, like these different variables from just like the tenor of your voice. So we're getting able to, because of the massive processing power of LLMs and other AI tools, to really interpret a lot of different markers, whether it's sweat or blood pressure or heart rate, obviously, or vision, or, mood and attitudes and diet and all these things. So when you're looking into the future, short-term, long-term, are you thinking of developing, Babyscripts into a hardware company that's going to actually get and gather some of these markers, a software company, a medical company that's doing analysis and serving the doctors? Where do you see kind of the future of Babyscripts evolving?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll kind of put it into 2 categories, right? There's things that we collect today, and I want to make a really important point on that. And then there's kind of the future state, right? So, one thing that's interesting in pregnancy is that you can actually do a lot by collecting kind of very basic information. So, for example, just simply knowing that, like what type of pregnancy it is, right? Is it a basic pregnancy, or does the mom have, right? Like that creates two very different sort of trajectories, essentially, right? Or history of pregnancy, what happened in last pregnancy ends up being a pretty risk factor, right? The other thing also is that being like the mom basically engaged, right? In other words, like back in the old days, you'd go to your local library or go to the bookstore and just buy a book, right? Which says, hey, here's everything you should know about pregnancy, right? How much water can you drink? How much coffee can you drink? Can you take Tylenol? Blah, 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 right? Super important, because if you make the wrong kind of move there, then that leads to, potential adverse events downstream in the actual delivery episode. Right? A lot of what we do is actually like not just collect information, but also educate and engage patients, right? To the point where it's specific to their doctor. It's like, hey, like who should I call if this happened? Or, what pediatrician do you recommend as my doctor, right? So it's a lot of that is a kind of like care coordination, right? So I put that all in the current day sort of like, bucket. In the future, like there's just all of these like data that's being collected. Sleep, nutrition, the use of CG on continuous glucose monitors is a big deal. Right? And I think a rate limiting step there is the clinical efficacy and validation. Right? And what I mean by that is, it's one thing to collect the data. It's something different to validate, hey, here's when you should intervene. Here's when you should do nothing, right? Because what doctors tell us is like, hey, like I love all this data that's happening, and I love like that I can track your steps and your heart rate and all these type of things, your temperature, right? But what I don't have the time for is to weed through all of those details and know when to intervene. And if I look at that data, I'm actually exposing myself to more liability. Like one thing we haven't touched on is medical legal, right? So I don't want to get sued if something bad happens. And pregnancy as this is very litigious, right? So when we use clinical efficacy, right? A study showing, hey, like if temperature rises X%, then that's a rising risk that needs intervention, or sleep patterns are off this percent, then requires a deeper sleep study, right? That type of thing. And I think that sort of like stitching of the end value is something that we're very interested in, but quite frankly hasn't been fully done or published, right? So I look at our North Star, it's to remove all the friction in that process. We think data is the future, right? And this is where AI can play a big role in that.
Percent. Did you say that like introducing more data creates more liability on the doctor side?
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. So let's just say, I decide to share my sleep data with my doctor, and like let's just say something adverse happened, like to the baby at the time of delivery, or to the mom, and but that can get into some legal complications in the sense that the doctor has, actionable information technically, right? And, a patient could get litigious on it, right? Like, I mean, these are all like rare scenarios, right? Candidly. So, but at the same time, right? Like, it is one of the things that goes into the thinking of the provider or the doctor in making a decision. It's like, hey, you know what? I'd rather not even look at it than go down the road of taking on risk, right? So
what a nightmare.
I mean, if the incentives are totally screwed on this one, so that's definitely a concern.
That's
right?
terrible.
And this is where like even like there's at-home ultrasounds you can do. If there's fetal monitors now that have been commercialized, all really interesting and valuable technologies, but there's real risk. I mean, to a certain extent, I can definitely see and understand where the medical profession is coming from, right? They're like, hey, like I don't want to do this unless it's number one, it's clinically validated, and number two, it's actionable, right? So, but at the same time, right, like this goes back to the earlier question. It just slows down the rate of innovation, right, in healthcare. So,
seems like a major problem. Like if doctors aren't incentivized to have as much data points as they possibly can to inform the care, rather they're like, hey, I don't want to deal with the liability of knowing too much about what you're eating. So let's not talk about that wine at the end of the night. That's all you talk. I don't know.
Well, so one interesting piece on this, there is some interesting areas of potential excitement here, right? Like one is on this newer model of payment called value-based care. Relatively, it's been around for a while. But the where in value-based care, let's just say, Ryan, you're the patient, I'm the doctor, right? I get paid a flat fee to take care of you every year, right? And it doesn't matter what kind of care I deliver, how often I see you, if I don't see you, I just get one fee, right? So all of a sudden I'm incentivized to make sure like I'm really taking care of you, right? Because I'm getting one fee. And if I keep you, safe and not really all that sick, then I basically profit more. It's so these alternative payment models are interesting. It looks like the wave of the future, right? But it will also take some time to fully mature, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It just makes me want to like interview my doctors and make sure they're not on this train, or I'll fire them immediately. It's like,
Yeah.
I would much rather prefer somebody who's like, look, man, I'm going to kind of keep it loose and fast here, giving you the best care I possibly can. Let's try this. Let's try this. Let's try this. That kind of person brings, also just kind of philosophical spark of improvisation and innovation that, so I won't harp on it too much, but like kind of as I introduced it, I do find myself in this like frustrating place oftentimes with the medical system and the kind of actual care, because to me, you can't provide care. It's actually the antithesis of care if you're like, you're putting your head in the sand, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, if I'm also kind of steel manning their case as much as possible here, right? So it comes back to access to care. I mean, if I have 30 patients to see today, right, with 15-minute increments, right? Like, at the end of the day, I'm kind of burnt out. My wife's an OBGYN, so, I get to see this firsthand to a certain extent, right? So, like, you see a whole list of patients today, and then you come home and, you have dinner, and then you boot up your laptop again and you document everything, right? Documentation is such a big deal. Actually, there's some major changes coming down the pike there, which we can talk about with AI. But yeah, anyway, long story short, yeah, I mean, this goes back to your original point. I mean, healthcare is, as you can imagine, right, like pretty hesitant to change. Thing is still a major modality by which information gets sent across machine, so that's still a real thing in healthcare, right? So.
Yeah. Cool. So who's the customer for Babyscripts? Is it doctors? Is it moms? Who's the customer?
Yeah, we're B2B, right? So we sell to health systems, doctors, providers. Now they in turn offer it to their patients, right? So that's kind of the end consumer. In some ways it's a B2B2C kind of model, right? But we don't directly sell to consumers. It requires a doctor prescription or approval for them to get on.
Cool. So mama goes to the doctor. They're like, hey, we're going to monitor this pregnancy and care with Babyscripts. Talk a little bit about like the feeling that you want to elicit from moms. Like how do you want them to feel using the tool?
Yeah. So, I mean, at that first early conversation, it's like, congratulations on your pregnancy. You know what? We're going to just take care of you by using Babyscripts. What does that mean? We're going to be able to monitor you when you're home, not, when you're out and about, not just when you're in the office here, right? Because a lot of stuff happens in between those appointments. These risks are not captured, right? You can capture it. As a result of that, we get better care, and we get a more engaged patient, and ultimately a more satisfied. So from a patient perspective, right, the really cool thing that we've seen is they get a little kit that's delivered to their home, or they leave with that from the hospital, right? And we see a huge amount of empowerment as a result of it. It's like, oh, wow, like I get to like actually do some of this myself. Put on a blood pressure cup, take my blood pressure, answer a bunch of questions, right? Like I'm motivated, right? Like I'm motivated in my own care, as opposed to some doctor just like telling me, very specifically what to do, right? And I'm the one that'll say, hey, doc, like I did X, Y, Z, and here's what I'm seeing. Let's have that discussion, blah, 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 right? So you have a more engaged, empowered, motivated patient that ultimately can drive just honestly a better journey for the patient, and also improve clinical outcomes, right? That's the other piece of it, right? So,
yeah. So moms feel like they've got agency. They're getting kind of a perceived extra touch points with the doctor on a daily basis. Hey, I'm uploading all the information. I've seen screen grabs from Babyscripts. I haven't gotten around to play around in there, but it's also beautiful and easy to use. I mean, I'm a little late to the doctor game because I'm more of like a rub a crystal on it kind of guy. But since See, you're getting a little bit older. You got to go get things checked out. So I got a whole fleet of doctors, and I'm telling you, the technology and platforms that they're using are terrible. So like
Yeah.
UI and
Yeah. And
UX
I think that's
is really
well, we're trying to bring it to the 21st century. That's really what we're trying to do, right? It's so I mean, I think, it's think about like the experience that you have, if you were to drive a Tesla, right? Or if you were to honestly, like, use any modern device or technology or platform. Like, you want to try and mimic that as much as possible. Yeah, bring pregnancy to the 21st century. It's like a big part of what we're doing, right?
Yeah. So mamas are feeling good because they have agency in their pregnancy. That's good. Doctors are feeling good because it's aggregating any kind of concerns. Also, a lot of data before their next visit. They're also being able to like soothe any kind of pregnancy cares. Which my wife had 2 kids, and I remember how that is. There's definitely a lot of anxiety there. So that's helping that. And also, I'm sure it's saving, the doctor's staff resources a lot of like answering
That's right.
emails and like calling the clinics and things like that, because there's a central
You
place where they
call,
can go.
right, avoiding unnecessary visits, right? So that's another piece of it, right? So, and look, the other thing also is that, like, they're identifying escalating risk, right? So, one of our patients might have critically high blood pressure. Let's get them to labor and delivery. In some cases, deliver that baby early, right? Without having some dangerous situation happen to the mom or the baby, right? So, for the doctors, it's identifying risk that they know is out there, but little limited visibility into, right?
Yeah.
So,
It seems to be like a lot of news stories about like Gen Z's not having kids. Are you worried about your job security?
um, yeah, well, I mean, I think what's that old adage, right? The two things that will always stay is, like, taxes, death, and having babies, right? So I mean, that's a little bit reductive, right? I do think that we like there is like deeper sort of underlying sort of trend around not necessarily Gen Z not having kids, but potentially having kids later in life. It's so I think that actually ends up being creating more risks, right? So if you have a pregnancy after the age of 35, it's called advanced maternal age, right? So that has more risks. You require fertility services to have the kid, right? And then downstream that could lead to a high risk pregnancy. So in some ways, right, it creates more usefulness for a tool like ours, right?
Yeah.
So even though the numbers might kind of taper off or stabilize, right? Like, more people will demand our services, right? So,
Yeah. That makes sense.
but
Plus,
yeah, short answer to your question, I'm not worried about a big drop in pregnancies, at least not yet.
yeah.
So.
First time moms when they're 40. I mean, the anxiety and stress has really had a time to fester and mature. So we're going to
That's
be
right.
looking for
That's
those
right.
kind of data points and feedback for sure. When you're 23, you still feel like you're invincible. You're like, oh, we're gonna have a baby. It's great. You're not worried about it.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of times, if you're having a baby in 40, right, you might not have a lot of other shots on goal. It's really important to make sure you're really taking care of your body and ultimately fetus as well.
Yeah. So as you're looking at the next 12 months, let's say, what are some goals for the product that you're really excited about?
Yeah, so I think the couple of areas that we're excited about, one I'll mention is very much sort of in the AI realm, right? So interestingly, in healthcare, I think the biggest value initially will be around automation of all of the gunk, right? So every time we have an interaction with our patient, right, that needs to be transcribed, documented, summarized, and ultimately creates a billing event for it. There's a whole sort of like this flow there. Not necessarily super clinical in nature, but highly administrative. And it just creates a lot of burden, right? So it'd go away as sort of the first thing in the world of AI, right? So using LLMs to generate, clinical summaries, generate clinical notes, documenting it, ultimately creating a billing event. Right? So that's kind of the first phase. And then, beyond that, looking at, predictive risk algorithms and stuff to deliver in the future is something also we're pretty excited about. Anything that's data rich, right, could be used to find signals and risk predictors that it might be pretty difficult for just look at the data and see it, right? So we can predict that. That's a big deal as well, right?
Yeah, that could be huge time saver, just administrative drain. When you're building the app, how much consideration is going into kind of stickiness for the moms? So is there attention to like gamification or just things to make it more fun? I could imagine doing like a daily selfie as you can see the little bump growing, things like that. I mean, what's the line between like creating kind of like a fun consumer product and having something very clinical?
Yeah, so it definitely is, a little bit more on the clinical side, right? We certainly rely on the core consumer kind of engagement pieces, right? So we have, in some instances, the customers can have like a reward system, right, that they can use to reward patients by completing tasks and doing things in pregnancy, right? We also generally want to make it very visual, multimodal in nature. You have kind of this Instagram-like feel within the app, right? But I will say, I think our goal isn't necessarily like these big social media platforms to keep the mom in the app for 4, 5, 6 hours a day, right? That's just not very reasonable. But there are some very key critical things we want them to do. I mean, learn about what's happening this week, right? Learn about what are the things they need to do. There are a bunch of questions, take some biometrics, and then they're done, right? So it's more like, I kind of like to say it's like closer to Uber than it is to like, Facebook or Instagram, right? Which is, there's a very specific set of things I'm going into the app for. So we optimize for that, right? So that's kind of the key thing we build into it.
Some economics questions for the CEO. From what I saw, you guys have raised about 37 million. You've been around for 12, 13 years, fairly mature, stable business. So what's next on tap? Are you guys looking to be acquired? Are you going to raise and scale? Are you thinking of acquiring other companies? What's next for the biz?
Yeah, so I think from my standpoint, we don't necessarily think about an acquisition and from a day-to-day standpoint, operationally. Obviously, we know that there are opportunities out there, right? So that's something we're always sort of keeping in the back of our minds. But to be honest, our goal is to build a broader set of products and features to our platform that we already have, and then expand our user base, right? So our goals are to get to then for pregnancies by 2030, right? Like that's sort of the ambitious sort of goal that we're going after. In doing that, we have to build out some additional product, some additional high risk services, and at the same time sort of keep scaling what we already have, right? So I think the future Babyscripts will not just be kind of the software piece, but a software with the blend of working with other hardware providers and then ecosystem of partners, right? So
yeah, you're obviously bullish on technology and data driven. As this gets more ubiquitous, and it will, like obviously a lot of these things will replace a lot of in-person kind of visits. Do you see like the role of doctors and primary care kind of evolving to maybe more of a, for lack of a better word, shamanistic kind of nurturing kind of relationship?
Yeah, so I mean, I actually think what's going to happen is, this is a little bit further down the road, but I think the consumers are going to have, let's say, like I'll say a team of experts, maybe not doctors, but a team of experts that they can pull on really on demand asynchronously. It could be agentic in nature, right? But it's going to be some blend of that. So you'll have your primary care physician, say, as a captain of the ship. What these like modern technologies enable girls to do is like, let's just say I need a dietitian. It's a very specific need. I'm not going to have to any longer like find a local dietitian in my community, get an appointment, right? It's all going to be in like one thing.
Yeah.
Right? Well, let's just say I need something very specific to my sleep issue. Okay, well, you can just through like a turn on a switch, get a sleep specialist to come in and work with me and then, kind of turn it back on. Right? So you're going to have like a longitudinal view of a patient's health record. And then on that, kind of dial it up or down as necessary. And some of that's going to be AI driven, full agentic, care provider, right, or a doctor, and some of that's going to be, human based, right? I think that's going to be the, like the future that I envision is, they say like a doctor in your pocket, right? Like I think that's not too far off from where we are. Maybe it'll take another decade or so because this is healthcare, right? But I think, kind of the ability to scale. And the reason I say that is because a primary care physician, right, today kind of manages about like 3,000 patients. They should be able to double, triple, quadruple that if you sort of scale things up, augment it, and then scale things the right way, right? So you can apply that to any subspecialty in care, right? So that's an exciting feature. It means anyone can have any type of care at any point, at any time, right? So, and that's also true in pregnancy, right? So it's, that's the exciting part of all those. Right?
Yeah, it sounds amazing having kind of like your own doctor that's private to you, like you don't want like Sam Altman having all your medical history, of course, but you
Right.
can wall that off. And now it sounds like because there's liability to data points, then perhaps you can get better care. And I just make the example that like if, let's say you go to your primary care physician and they're like, hey man, we're going to run your blood work. Everything looks great. But, you also divulge to me that you're drinking 4 cocktails a night. So when that health insurance or life insurance policy comes through, I'm going to have to share that information with them because I don't want the liability of this coming back to haunt me, with the life insurance company. So now your policy went from $75 to $750 a month, even though all your biomarkers show you're healthy, but rather you divulged information that people were afraid of liability. Now, that's a very specific case, but if that trend continues, which it kind of seems like it is not, I mean, I guess I'm being directly irritated by our healthcare system, largely just the insurance providers and things like that. Having an AI doctor that you can divulge without any kind of fear of repercussion, one way or the other, seems like very helpful. Now with the current LLMs we've got, you obviously have to take that with a grain of salt because hallucinations are real, but largely if you can get 80-90% of the way there, you're not making major medical decisions based on, perplexity or something.
Yeah.
It seems like it could be a great benefit. This episode is brought to you by MoBurst, the AI-first growth engine trusted by iconic startups like Calm, Robinhood, Reddit, Uber, and Google. MoBurst is a digital full-service mobile-first marketing agency that helps companies to scale and become category leaders. Whether you're finding product market fit or ready to accelerate growth, MoBurst delivers creative, data-driven solutions that help with scale and efficiency and impact. At MoBurst, we're not just guessing what works, we're predicting it. As an AI-first agency, MoBurst uses cutting-edge tools to analyze user behavior, adapt creative in real time, and uncover hidden growth opportunities. The result, marketing that's faster, smarter, and built to convert. From early-stage startups to global brands, we've helped hundreds of companies overcome complex challenges, unlock new audiences, and optimize every metric that matters. At MoBurst, we believe that creative thinking, advanced technology, and data are the core drivers of success at scale. If you're serious about scaling your business with precision and purpose, it's time to talk to MoBurst. Visit moburst.com and let's build something category-defining together.
Yeah, and I think the way I kind of look at it is on one hand, right, like you have this real-time stream of information coming in. If you have an Apple Watch, it's collecting all that data, your step count, your this, your that, your activity circles, your rings. Like if you have like a Whoop band or Oura ring, it's collecting all that, right? And then in real time, you have kind of an agent, right? Like just like screening that, looking at that, right? Like, again, this is going to be totally agentic in nature, right? And saying, something's a little off here, right? Now let me bring in like an actual, doc or an actual expert to do a human review, right? Because I still think that's super important. And say, hey, Ryan, like, hey, I noticed XYZ's happening. What's going on? Oh, you just, had like a big slice of pizza, whatever, right? It could be nothing. Could also be, look, I need you to come in. Let's do a full blood work. This is something that is speaking my interest, and I need to do a little bit more digging on this, right? So that world is such a like the detection of a risk and the intervention and in like the same loop, right? So that's amazing. That is the future of healthcare. That means, that means like you can collectively improve health of humanity, right? And that's also true in pregnancy, which, think about like not having, babies being born earlier than they should, or just going through full term in a more healthy manner, right? So that gets me pretty excited, but it is also, I will say, like a ways away, right? Because all the things we talked about, regulatory, governance, incentives, medical, legal, right? So, hey, it's the vision. That's the dream. Right? So,
Love it. Let's say you snap your fingers, you can never work in healthcare again or health tech again. What company would you start right now?
if I could not work in healthcare
Yeah.
again,
You have any other business ideas rattling around in there?
I'll point to two. I'm actually a big believer in mixed reality or augmented reality or virtual reality. I think there's a lot of value in it, right? So I think I don't know exactly what setting, but certainly in the enterprise setting, I can see a lot of value for it, right? The other one is, I would say, it's like robotics is the other piece, which I think will be a truly transformative wave. We're still a ways away from truly seeing the impact of that, but it's on the heels of some of these LLM products taken off, right? So, the Optimist is an interesting one, right? But there's a lot of others that are going on, right? But yeah, I mean, I can't not think about healthcare. Both of those have implications in healthcare, but those are two areas that I would definitely do some work in.
Optimus is going to be $20,000. Are you going to get one?
I mean, if it's truly $20,000 and I don't have to fold my laundry ever again, sign me up. Is what I'm going to tell you. All right. So it would save a lot of hassle and headache and some arguments with my wife. So,
dude, they need to make it look like R2D2 though, man. Some robot with a head like that, I just have the instinct to want to hit it in the head with a bat. I'm just like, man, I don't want some human looking thing in the closet recharging and I just know it's in there. There's something about like the build that
it's a little freaky.
Yeah.
It's a little freaky. Yeah. Yeah. Have you seen, I think it's like Figure 8. They make it super realistic. It's a little
with some dead shark eyes looking at you like, you want a sandwich? Be like, no, I do not. I will make it myself. Just go sit down and make yourself comfortable. You're giving me heart palpitations. Look at you in my kitchen.
Yeah. No, that's that's definitely going to take some getting used to.
Yeah. If it was short.
Again, if it solves laundry folding for me, that's a big deal. And dishes, those two, that's a big deal. I might have to get okay with the awkwardness, at least initially, So what do you think? What's your hot take on future technologies? Anything that stick out to you?
I love all of them. If I want to get real crazy, I like thinking about quantum computing and just the power and magnitude of like what that means, because it seems like it turns into some kind of trans-dimensional like wormholes opening and stuff like that, so
yeah, it's like it's one of the Marvel movies, right? Where there's like, time lapsing and, leaping, so
yeah, I love it.
They were onto something there.
I love that. You're interested in AR. So like, let's say our glasses right now have some kind of, we can put stuff on the screen. What would you put on the screen?
Also, I mean, again, because of my like experience, my mind quickly goes into care. But think about a surgeon having an AR glass in there, right? And he's in there, he's dissecting something. It's doing sort of using computer vision, real-time analysis of everything that's going on, saying, hey, this looks good. This looks good. Oh, hold on a second. There's something off here, right? So, and might be able to pick up things that the surgeon might not. Right? So I think that's pretty cool. And then you can also sort of, think about this in the paramedic emergency response space, right? Let's just say someone needs, real-time coding or resuscitation, or let's just say you have to deliver a baby, right? Emergency delivery in the back of a car. These days, it's just a total like, hope and a prayer. You put one of these AR glasses on, a doctor kind of beams in, and then it's like guiding you, doing this, doing that, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's pretty powerful.
I
So
agree, and the kind of symbiosis I think is really interesting to me too, of like robotics and humanity, and human computer
Neuralink,
interface,
right?
Neuralink, of course, because our hardware right now is hardwired for like 10 fingers, 2 arms, 2 legs, but like you could go doc awk really quick and be like, okay, now I have 8 appendages, and like you can start to like assign different tasks to different voluntary body movements. So like, you're controlling your other 2 arms by blinking your eyes in some way, or by looking into a field of vision, or like by secreting some kind of like sweat gland that now you have control over, you know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, so I think the first realm there is, so yes, I think there's a world where you expand what you already have, but I think the starting point there is like you replace something you might not have. So think about a
Yeah.
scenario where one needs a heart. It can, yeah, today you might look for a transplant, but I've seen these scenarios where it's like, yeah, especially a pancreas, right, for type 1 diabetics. There's scenarios there where they can, replace an artificial pancreas eyes, right? I've seen, actually even Neuralink comes into demos where you can see all of a sudden,
Yeah.
right? That stuff is pretty rad.
Yeah.
Now of course the future is like, yes, like having more eyes and more ears and more sensitive ears, right? So giving you superhuman abilities,
Yeah.
So here we go. We're talking about crazy stuff again.
That's the
So
fun stuff. It's the fun stuff. I think about it like
yeah,
this. Like,
yeah,
would I replace my legs if I could dunk? Probably not. But would I replace my calf muscles and then I could dunk and run really fast? Boy, I probably would. So it
yeah.
becomes like kind of an interesting conversation of like, what is me? Like, I am in my totality. Like, I want to have my toes over there. You want to replace my foot? I don't think I'm signing up. But if it's like ligaments and a heart and things like that, be like, yeah, I think I would do that for performance enhancing. Even on top, if it's a medical emergency, of course, sign me up. But like, what would I do just for
Right, right.
funsies?
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I think the other part of it is in the realm of like fertility, right? Like, you can also, now do all these sort of like advanced screenings on an embryo, for example, right? Before, you put the embryo back into the uterus, essentially, right? So, you know, uh, remember that movie of designer babies, right? So it's that's still a ways away, and obviously there's a lot of bioethics associated with it, right? But it's in the realm of like biological and scientific feasibility.
Yeah,
So
it's coming. I
there's
I
like some of
know
these advanced
I
testing
know
goes.
I'd be the
So
person to do it once CRISPR really catches up. I name my kids
yeah,
weird names, so I'd be like, hey, can we give them a tail and give them like purple eyes? That would be cool.
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean,
Amazing.
yeah, I mean that's the future that I think we're all. I don't know if it's dystopic or utopic. That's where for society to figure out. But look, I mean, at the end of the day, right? Technological progress is fundamentally a good thing, right? That's what I believe in. That's why I'm an innovator, right? That's why I think you're also in the space,
Yeah,
right? While there are always like, it's a double-edged sword on a lot of these things, right? Like we figure it out, right? So,
cool. Couple of questions here for the lightning round. Let's say you sell your business for $1 billion.
right.
Hypothetically, you can never work again. You actually can't work. How would you fill your days?
Would probably, yeah, I think two things. I know this is lightning round, but I'll make it quick. Yeah, I love learning, right? So I'd probably pick one or two areas to go fully deep in, and then also maybe teach. So that's one thing I feel pretty good about. And a lifelong dream is has also been to farm, maybe a little restaurant at the from a farm to table concept. It's more of a dream more than anything. I don't know if it'll ever come to light, but yeah, I'll go with that. A farm and a teacher. That's what I'm doing.
What would be on the menu?
It's more from a concept of just like sustainability, right? So it's just the basics, right? Fruits, vegetables, yeah, just like living off the earth type of concept, right?
It's a boring restaurant, man. What are we doing?
You know what? I might throw in like some niche mushrooms in there as well. So that you'd have to really come a long way to get a hold of, right? So maybe that's what I'll do.
Cool.
So,
I love it. Is there a CEO or a fellow founder that is inspiring or that you follow closely?
yeah, I mean, certainly have a lot of respect for some of the marquee kind of generational ones, right? Think about your Steve Jobs of the world, your Larry and Sergey's of the world, right? I recently read a book on Uber, right? So Travis Kalanick. I think he has his flaws, but there's a certain certain kind of personality that he had that I think definitely kind of propelled Uber into its current day. I think yeah, so those are kind of the key ones that that come to mind from CEOs that inspire.
Cool. Last one here. If you could live in any historical era, place, and time, where and when would it be?
I'm a sucker for childhood and sort of early adolescent years, right? So there's a lot of nostalgia that I have for the early 2000s, early mid 2000s, right? Where now like R&B hip hop thing was just starting to take off. You still had rock and roll, and the world seemed like it was your oyster, right? Social networking was just kind of taking off, right? But yeah, I mean, call me a little nostalgic, but I'll say early 2000s, as the place that I want to go back to.
Love it. Early 2000s, you got your Discman and your Case Logic CD player. What are you listening to?
Definitely, early 2000s, I was definitely in the Linkin Park, Metallica kind of phase, right? And then mid 2000s, I shifted to a little Jay-Z in there, to some Kanye, got into like the rap hip hop style of things. Right now, it's mostly just pop, but yeah, I mean, I was good variety and blend there. Right?
What did you think of the Linkin Park Jay-Z mashup album?
Yeah. So I always thought that it was epic. It was epic. Yeah, like
absolute fire.
Yeah, the in the end piece that the live concert was amazing. So. Yeah, you wouldn't think it would work right off the bat, but something about that combo just crushed it.
Fantastic. Amazing. Anish, this has been so fun. I really appreciate it. I want to give a shout out to a charitable organization that is near and dear to your heart, which is the March of Dimes. Is that particularly close to the one in New York City?
Their offices are in Washington, D.C., which is kind of where I'm originally from, but they have a national kind of presence, but they do incredible work. Research, advocacy, it's trying to make the world a better place to have babies, and so aligned with what we're trying to do as well.
And they actually have $1 Million Babies March, March for Babies for March of Dimes, which is coming up in New York City if people want to check that out.
We actually participated in that march. So a lot of fun. So.
Fantastic. You can learn more about Babyscripts at babyscripts.com. That will be in the show notes if you want to click there and check that out. Anish, what's the best place for people to connect with you online?
Yeah, you can find me on Anish at babyscripts.com. So I'm on LinkedIn, so you can also hit me up. Search Anish Sebastian.
Thanks so much for coming on the show.
It was awesome. Great conversation. It was a lot of fun.
Hey, founders, let me ask you this. Are you building with AI or getting left behind by it? If you're serious about scaling smarter, faster, and bolder, you need to check out aiforfounders.co. It's your go-to resource for cutting through the noise and actually using AI to grow your startup. Each week, AI for Founders drops a sharp, no-fluff newsletter, dives deep with expert guests on the podcast, and hosts monthly workshops where you can get your hands dirty with the real tools and strategies. Whether you're pre-seed or Series B and beyond, launching something new, or just staying sharp, AI for Founders gives you the edge you need to win in 2025 and beyond. Hit aiforfounders.co to subscribe to the newsletter, tune into the podcast, and grab your spot in the next workshop. And it's all free. Build smarter, move faster, think bolder with AI for Founders. Now back to the show.